A development in the Atlantic tonight. Searchers say they have found debris on the seabed near the wreck of the Titanic. A mini-sub carrying 5 men, 3 of them British, vanished on Sunday, an hour into its descent to the ocean floor. Planes and remote-control vessels scouring the area for any sign of it.
If we are referring to debris on the sea floor somewhere, then I'm afraid to say we're giving the analogy the same way of a Formula 1 crash.
Well, it is thought that any oxygen would now have run out on the sub by lunchtime today. With tonight's developments, hopes it would seem really are fading for a safe return. Also ahead, the human cost of higher interest rates. Borrowers feel the pain as the Bank of England puts up base rates to 5%, the highest since the financial crisis of 2008.
We don't have treats because ultimately the goal is to keep a roof over our heads. What do? You've just got to save money somewhere, and that includes not going out for days.
It's from the front line, how technology is helping Ukrainian forces retrieve their wounded. Here, 75 years since the Empire Windrush. Celebrations, but reflections too of the hardship and injustice faced by many. And
Desert Hero has won! His Majesty the King!
royal victory, high emotion as the King and Queen get their first win at Ascot.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. The US Coast Guard has said tonight, in the last few minutes, a debris field has been found in the ocean in the area where a mini-submersible that had gone to view the Titanic went missing. The discovery was made by a remotely operated vehicle within the search zone, and experts are now analysing the information from it. But tonight, any hopes of finding the 5 men on board, including 3 Britons, are fading fast. Well, in just a moment, we will get the latest from our correspondent Lucy Watson in Boston in the US, where the search operation is being coordinated. But first, this report from Neil Connery in St John's in Newfoundland, from where those on board left last weekend.
St John's is a city used to extremes, lying at North America's most easterly point. It was from this port that the Titan submersible and its crew of 5 headed out on the Polar Prince to explore the wreck of the Titanic on Saturday. This clip shows the company's videographer on board the vessel as the Titan goes beneath the surface on its mission behind her. Also filmed is French diver Paul-Henri Nargeolet, one of the leading experts on the Titanic wreck, who is also on board. There's been no contact with the submersible and the 5 people inside since Sunday. It emerged today, the youngest, Suleiman Dawood, seen here on the top left, who's 19, is a student at the University of Strathclyde. Within the last hour, US Coast Guards coordinating the search tweeted a debris field has been discovered within the search area by a remotely operated vehicle near the Titanic. Experts are now assessing. A briefing is expected later this evening.
If we are referring to debris on the sea floor somewhere, then I'm afraid to say we're giving the analogy the same way of a Formula 1 crash.
One former science journalist who travelled in a Russian Mir submersible to the Titanic has spoken of the terror of the Mir becoming lodged in the wreck for 30 minutes in 2000.
There are no ways out of here. You're under 2.5 miles of water in the middle of nowhere. You can't just call the tow service. They're not going to just tow you out. And that was hard for me. That was a hard pill for me to swallow. And it hit me like a brick wall.
St John's is watching and hoping. This place knows how cruel the ocean which defines it can be. In these critical hours, it's praying for a miracle. One diving expert who's been down to the Titanic's wreck calls it a place of scorching fear and fugitive beauty. For the 5 families, the coming hours could confirm their worst fears. Neil Connery, ITV News, St John's, Newfoundland.
Well, our correspondent Lucy Watson is in Boston, where the main rescue operation is being coordinated. Lucy, with bearing in mind this latest development, what are the authorities saying tonight?
Well, Mary, a lot has changed in the last hour. Debris being discovered close to the Titanic implies that they have discovered some kind of wreckage down there. Whether that is the Titan submersible, we can't say for definite just yet, but the signs are ominous. Now, the very fact that the authorities have made this announcement is significant in itself. Now, all the concerns in recent days have been about that oxygen supply and when that will run out. What this now suggests is that something more catastrophic seems to have happened down there. Now, this implies very much that this operation, what was a search and rescue operation, has now shifted somewhat, and it may now be just a recovery operation. Now, in the next few hours, the Coast Guard will give a press conference just across this stretch of water here where they are stationed. So hopefully we will get more details, more information, but the signs do not look good.
OK, Lucy Watson in Boston, thank you. And we will bring you any updates on that, of course, as we get them. In the meantime, here, the Prime Minister insisted today we're going to get through the stubborn inflation, which has prompted the Bank of England to raise interest rates to a punishing 15-year high. Rishi Sunak said he is 100% on it, although the problem appears to be one that neither he nor the bank's governor can seem to solve. Andrew Bailey said today he knows putting the base rate up to 5% will be hard, as he put it, for many people, but he says it is the best way to tackle inflation. It is certain to be a financial nightmare for many, with 800,000 homeowners set to remortgage before the end of the year. We will have analysis of the economic and political fallout from today's decision a bit later. But first, here's Stacey Foster on another rate rise.
Becky has raised her son Isaac in this house. Together, they have made it a home. But now the mortgage has gone up, and not by an amount that's affordable.
The plan is to work and pay your bills and keep the roof over your head.
Tell us exactly how much it has gone up.
It's not a couple of £100s, it's close to double what it was, so 600 plus.
So is there any contingency?
No, once all the household bills are paid, so obviously all the essentials are paid, there's next to nothing left, because all of the money that I would have saved is now going on a mortgage.
The cost of borrowing has reached 5%, the highest in nearly 15 years. That means an average 2-year fixed-rate mortgage has gone from £881 to more than £1,300 per month, an increase of £431.
Well, I understand the difficulty and the pain it causes for many people, and I do understand that. What I would say, though, is that if we don't get inflation back down to target, then it goes on for much longer, and the pain goes on for longer, and none of us want that.
And despite the pain for homeowners, the Prime Minister says he's sticking to the plan.
I'm here to tell you that I am totally 100% on it, and it is going to be OK, and we are going to get through this.
Spending is what's pushing up inflation, but the last thing traders at Knaresborough Market want to see is fewer customers with less money to spend.
My mortgage itself has shot through the roof, so we're struggling to pay that.
We've had the cost of living crisis, now we've got inflation, and all prices keep going up, and we feel we're stuck in the middle here.
Politicians in their own little bubble don't seem to be overly concerned at the moment. The only thing they seem to do is, let's put interest rates up again. That's the only lever that they seem to be using, and it's not working at the moment.
How long can you survive for then with this?
We'll survive. You've got to survive. If we don't survive, we go under.
Interest rates going up should eventually mean the essentials cost less. But in the short term, this latest step to curb inflation leaves anyone with a mortgage or a loan paying the price. Stacey Foster, ITV News, Knaresborough.
And our economics editor, Joel Hills, is with me now. You and I have been talking about this for weeks, and every time the rates go up, you say the pain is going to increase. But a lot of people are going to be suffering, aren't they?
They will, and of course it wasn't meant to be like this, Mary. Just a few months ago at the beginning of the year, the Bank of England was very confident that inflation would be falling very sharply by now. It isn't, and at midday today, the bank hiked interest rates to 5% and didn't push back, Mary, against the suggestion they'd rise further still. The bank had to act, Mary. Its credibility was at stake here. Let's have a look at what the bank forecast the rate of inflation would fall to in February, March, April and May there this year. Now, in each of those months, inflation came in higher than the bank predicted. 4 misses in a row doesn't inspire confidence that the bank is on top of things. Now, the bank believes higher interest rates are necessary in large part because wage growth is too strong and it's causing inflation. Pay rises in the private sector are running at 7.6% a year. Now, the bank's view is companies are funding pay rises at this level by increasing their prices. These are the 9 men and women on the Monetary Policy Committee who set interest rates. As you can see there, 7 of them voted for a 0.5% hike, including the governor. 2 wanted to pause. Now, the case for holding fire is the full force of interest rates that we've already had has not been felt yet in the last 18 months. Today's hike, of course, brings bank rate up to 5%, as you can see there. Now, the markets are betting interest rates will reach 6% by Christmas and will stay there for much of next year. Purging the economy of high inflation is going to be painful. Higher interest rates are intended to squeeze households, to restrict the amount they're able to spend. They're intended to squeeze businesses, to prevent them from putting their prices up. We don't desire a recession, the Governor of the Bank of England, Andrew Bailey, said today. But it may well be, Mary, that some sort of recession is inevitable. And the only way we can get of bringing inflation back under control, I'm afraid.
OK, Joel, thank you. And our political editor, Robert Peston, is in Downing Street tonight. Robert, today the Prime Minister was saying, I'm on it, it's all under control. Is he doing enough? Is that the perception?
Well, it's certainly not all under control, is it, Mary? So I've just been in Kent with the Prime Minister in an IKEA warehouse of all places. And he said a number of interesting things. I mean, on the question of whether he's doing enough, he spent most of his time talking to IKEA employees and talking to members of the media like myself about what he's not doing. So he's saying the biggest contribution the government can make is not to borrow to cut taxes, something that Liz Truss, as you know, famously and some would say disastrously did, not to borrow to push up spending on health and education and nurses and teachers' salaries. He recognises that cutting taxes and spending more on public sector services would be popular. And he's saying, however, in order to defeat inflation, he's not going to do any of that. So the question is he going to do anything active rather than just reining himself in? And one of the most interesting things he said today was that he and his Chancellor were keeping a very close eye on what supermarkets were doing with their prices. Now, up to now, the government has been very wary of forcing the supermarkets to curb their prices. But as I say, I was very struck that he felt he had to just volunteer that he was concerned about supermarkets' prices. Then there is the question of what kind of support he can directly give to mortgage holders. Nobody expects him to cave into Tory MP pressure to do a big bailout because, truthfully, if they did a big bailout of mortgage holders, the Bank of England would just put up interest rates more, which would completely defeat the purpose. But there is a scheme that helps those on lower incomes, and that might, I just say might, be made a bit more generous. OK, Robert Peston at Downing Street, thank you. Now, the significant contribution of the Windrush generation to Britain and British culture was celebrated today on the 75th anniversary of the first ship arriving from the Caribbean. The Empire Windrush was the first of many vessels which brought workers and their families to help the UK recover from the Second World War. Events were held across the country today, with the King joining in at Windsor Castle. Here's Sejal Karia.
Thank you for coming before us. A celebration of a defining moment in Britain's history that has shaped a modern, multicultural nation. commemorating the contribution of the Windrush generation to the fabric of British life since first arriving 75 years ago. The Empire Windrush docked at Tilbury in Essex in 1948, carrying more than 800 passengers from the Caribbean to new lives in the UK. On board that day, Alfred Gardner, one of only 2 surviving passengers.
It was cold. That was the only thing that bothered me when I first came. My idea was to work and raise a good family. And I think I've raised a beautiful family. I'm proud of him.
75 years on, a more modest boat pulled into Tilbury today, symbolising the journey Alfred and hundreds of others made. At Windsor Castle, the King attended a special service in St George's Chapel, which echoed to the sounds of songs and remembrance.
I want to refer to them as Windrush pioneers. Pioneers who paved the way for the generations who came after them.
For many, the commemoration's bittersweet, after the scandal which saw thousands wrongly classed as illegal immigrants. But this story was remembered today as one of pride as well as prejudice. Sejal Karia, ITV News.
Well, do stay with us as we will have a special report from Jamaica showing the harsh reality faced by many of the Windrush generation. We speak to those who have been forced back to the Caribbean because of their treatment in the UK.
I used to sit there thinking, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? I just couldn't work it out. It got to one point, I wouldn't open my front door. If anyone knocked my door, I wouldn't open it because I was afraid.
From the front line in Ukraine, can robots help save injured soldiers in the trenches? And
the environmentally friendly festival. Find out how Glasgow is going fossil fuel free for the first time.
Do join us after the break. We'll be live from the festival. See you then. Welcome back. Now, how Ukrainian forces are using the latest technology to try to limit the human cost of the war. Last night, we reported on the fierce frontline fighting with the Da Vinci unit. Tonight, we see the risks the unit has to undertake to rescue its injured comrades. They've now designed robots that can carry soldiers to safety and even allow them to carry on liberating their country. From eastern Ukraine, our correspondent Emma Murphy sends a special report which contains some images of the injuries sustained by the soldiers.
They're on a mission to evacuate an injured colleague. Under constant shelling. And pinned down by Russian drones. They take cover. Then head for the open ground. They're being watched from above. And targeted. They push on. Finally, they reach their injured colleague. He's in a bad way and needs to be got out quickly. But they're still being targeted and can't continue. They cover the casualty with branches to camouflage him and take cover. But it's too late. The rescue team get hit. 11 now harmed, trying to get one casualty out. Eventually, they get them all to safety, but it has been at great cost. And that is why the Da Vinci Battalion are trying to design new battlefield technology. This is a buggy which could evacuate casualties without the need for stretcher bearers, and also carry a machine gun to defend the trenches. And this is just a games console.
Yeah, this is just a game console. We can move here, and we can move up and down.
Having lost friends in battle, Alexander is determined to mechanise this war to minimise its harm.
In Bakhmut, we lost 21 people in the month and a half. Conservative estimates suggest we killed about 500. That's a ratio of 1 to 20. I want our ratio to be 500 to 0.
It may look rudimentary at the moment, but the demands of this war have advanced battlefield technology and are changing the way of warfare. Emma Murphy, ITV News, Eastern Ukraine.
And you can watch all of Emma's remarkable reporting with the Da Vinci unit on our website. That's itv.com/news. Now, every day, an average of 20 care home residents are being evicted in England. That is the shocking finding of exclusive data from ITV's Tonight programme. Residents, some of whom are extremely vulnerable, are given just 28 days' notice. Our UK editor Paul Brand looks at what's behind those figures.
Angela, we're getting ready to go now, aren't we?
If only for Angela, a new home promised new memories.
Just going.
Her dementia means moving only risks confusing the ones she still has.
It is upsetting, and you see Mum getting all upset, you know, saying she doesn't want to go and stuff like that.
Angela's been evicted from her care home. It says it can no longer meet her needs. So she's moving to a new one, which her family had 28 days formal notice to find.
We knew that she'd had a bit of
ongoing problems over a period of months, but we had no idea that anything would lead to an eviction or that it had even escalated to that. You can't sleep because it consumes you. You're just thinking, what are they going to do? Where's she going to go? And it has to be right, and it has to be somewhere we can visit.
Data obtained by the Tonight programme reveals that in the 18 months to April last year, over 11,000 people were served an eviction notice by their care home. That's more than 20 per day and equates to 1 in every 33 care home residents being evicted. That might be because a resident suddenly needs different care or because a family's criticised the standard of it.
I think you need a nap now, Dad. You've exhausted yourself.
Richard was evicted after his daughter complained about phone calls and visits. Management said a deteriorating relationship with Jane was disrupting the running of the home.
Do you think if you hadn't complained, your dad would still be in that care home?
Yeah, I wholeheartedly do. And I find it very sad that it did end up like it did. He's deteriorated a lot, and I do think if he had have stayed and not had this disruption, that dip might have happened at a little later stage.
Hi, Dad. You all right?
I miss him saying I love you. Sorry.
It's okay.
And we sometimes get that now, but it's hard.
It is also hard for carers, suffering record staff shortages. The sector says they're often too stretched to deal with challenging residents.
You have to think if you are complaining consistently about the level of care that's being delivered, then eventually that provider and the staff will be feeling that anything that they do is not going to be sufficient. We have a workforce crisis here, and the staff are trying to do the very best that they can.
All right, then.
Campaigners want a new mediation service to resolve disputes so that they never end in vulnerable people like Richard and Angela being kicked out of care. Paul Brand, ITV News.
And you can see more of Paul's investigation on ITV Tonight. Elderly and evicted our care home crisis. And that's at 8:30 this evening on ITV1 and UTV, and at 10:45 on STV. Bit of other news now, and a Metropolitan Police officer has been convicted of assault after he sprayed a man with a type of pepper spray as he climbed down a drain pipe. PC Luke Wenham had forced entry into the man's flat to arrest him on suspicion of robbery. But when the man clambered out of his 12th floor window, he sprayed him with the liquid. He will be sentenced next month. And thousands of rail workers will strike once again next month as part of a long-running dispute over pay and conditions. The RMT has announced walkouts for the 20th, the 22nd and the 29th of July. Now, this year's Glastonbury is promising not only to be one of the best lineups ever, but also the greenest too. The stages will be powered by renewable energy, eliminating the need for fossil fuels across the event. Our entertainment reporter Rishi Davda is at the festival site tonight. Rishi.
Glastonbury has been around for more than 50 years and it's bigger than ever, welcoming nearly 250,000 people. Anything that size is going to have a big impact on the environment, but that impact is very much at the forefront of organisers' minds. Every year they try to do something to be more green conscious, whether that's with the campsites or the transportation or the stages. On one stage this year, something a bit different is happening. Few sites are more synonymous with Glastonbury than the fiery fountain at the Arcadia stage. For more than a decade, those behind Arcadia have led the way with entertaining but environmentally conscious shows. This year, they've taken another big step.
The gathering around campfires, and it's got that same spirit. Everybody's in the ring around the fire. And it's been a real journey to try and convert those flame systems away from fossil fuels.
It's actually the Glastonbury guys that did a load of research and have found one that is refined from waste cooking oils. So obviously, you know, there's loads of restaurants, loads of commercial cooking operations. They've got this waste product that's taken and then refined to a degree that you can run it in a diesel engine or a big flame system.
It's just one part of the festival's push towards sustainability, running on solar, wind and pedal power. Abandoned tents are a thing of the past. More than 99% are now taken home. This year they've asked people not to bring disposable vapes, favouring the reusable ones. You can still buy them on site though. Was there ever a possibility about banning them altogether from sale?
Well, disposable vapes are not available on site. You can still buy vapes themselves in the same way you can buy cigarettes, which are also toxic to the environment. We're not stopping people from using them. We are asking them not to litter them on the ground.
Some I spoke to still brought theirs, but will be picking up after themselves.
I'm not going to leave it, I'm not going to do anything bad with it. Just take it home, they'll never know.
I think maybe people will be courteous and take them with them, because I don't see a lot of rubbish now, and we've been here since yesterday, so it's been quite nice. But no, I think they'll probably still bring them.
The festival has music at its core, but also encourages green habits. Founder Michael Eavis, who took to the stage himself this evening, gets the help of everyone to make the carbon footprint of his big festival as small as possible. Rishi Davda, ITV News, Glastonbury.
You're watching the ITV Evening News. It's just a little bit after 7 o'clock, and here's what's still ahead. Record numbers watching the Women's Ashes. Find out how England are faring as they go head-to-head with Australia on the first day at Trent Bridge.
The world's coming after you.
Back on the big screen, will this be the most impossible mission yet?
I'm going to be live on the red carpet and speaking to Tom Cruise about doing daredevil stunts in his 60s.
A royal 1-2, Bertinelli back in third.
Following in his mother's footsteps, the King secures his first victory at Ascot.
Plus, we may have had our longest day of the year so far, but sunset times won't be budging over the next couple of days. Confused? I'll explain more at the end of the programme.
But before all that, a special report on the members of the Windrush generation who will not be celebrating today's 75th anniversary. Despite their huge contributions to British life and culture, hundreds who legally settled in the UK were wrongly labelled illegal immigrants. The The Windrush scandal, as it became known, saw British citizens wrongly detained, deported and denied their legal rights. Among those targeted were a former British Army veteran who was refused medical help and a former builder who was left homeless after being unable to prove that he was British. Their treatment has forced them to return to Jamaica, where they were born. Our reporter Pablo Taylor went to the island to hear their stories.
Good afternoon. Cram water, I think we'll have.
Derek Peterkin's accent is not familiar around these parts. Although he was born in Jamaica, the 62-year-old has lived pretty much all of his life in Nottingham. He recently returned to the island to recover from nearly 3 years living homeless. Once a successful builder, Derek fell on hard times after a divorce, and his troubles were compounded when he applied for social housing and universal credit, but was denied both.
I ended up walking the whole of Nottingham city centre for, half a day. I went that night, I spent on the tram till about 4:30. I mean, I was basically 24 hours just running on the tram, you know, just dodging the ticket collectors, and that was the only way I could really keep warm.
But Derek's experience is not unique. Across the other side of Jamaica lives Anthony Williams. Like Derek, he was born on the island, but came to the UK as a child. In 2013, he was sacked by his employer, who had accused him of being an illegal immigrant, and his problems got worse when months later he developed a mouth infection and tried to see a dentist.
They asked me for an ID and a proof of address, which I provided with a letter and my photo ID as a driving licence. The receptionist then asked me for further ID, which I never had. She wanted to see my passport, which I didn't have, and they refused me to register. The only thing I could do from there, because my infection was pretty bad, was actually extract a few of my own teeth myself.
And do you remember how you did it?
With the help from half a bottle of vodka and a pair of pliers.
Unbeknownst to both Anthony and Derek, they had been caught up in the Windrush scandal. Their failure to receive help was no coincidence, but the result of government policies specifically designed to toughen the UK's stance on immigration.
We want to ensure that only legal migrants have access to the labour market, free health services, housing, bank accounts and driving licences. And this is not just about making the UK a more hostile place for illegal migrants, it is also about fairness.
But far from being fair, the policies targeted many from the Windrush generation who had been invited to Britain but whose details had not been properly recorded. There's a photo I've got of you. I wonder if you can just, first of all, tell me what it shows, and also tell me what you were feeling inside when this photo was taken.
Oh my God. That's how I was living, with nothing. I used to sit there thinking, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? I just couldn't work it out. It got to one point, I wouldn't open my front door. If anyone knocked my door, I wouldn't open it because I was afraid. I don't know why I was afraid, but that picture there, just me in thought. What I'm about to show you is my Northern Ireland medal.
Anthony's case was all the more shocking because of the 13 years he spent in the British Army. His medal is from the tour he served in Northern Ireland in the 1980s. But despite his service, he claims he received no help from the Ministry of Defence when it came to proving his Britishness.
I feel used and abused. I gave the Army the best part of my life. Now I'm at the Army, they don't want nothing to do with me. If I had to do all over again, there's no way I'd join the Army.
And that medal, tell me about that medal. You know, does it mean anything to you?
The only reason I've got this medal out is because you've asked me to show you this medal. It means nothing to me. Once you leave here, I'm going to put it away. I'll never see it again.
Both Anthony and Derek were awarded compensation by the Home Office, but their treatment by the department means they're now scarred by the country they once called home. Pablo Taylor, ITV News.
OK, well, let's get an update on what is making the news tonight. In the next hour, the US Coast Guard is expected to give more details on the debris found in the sea near the area where the Titanic submersible went missing. Reports suggest the debris could be the landing frame and cover of the missing vessel, but the search teams have yet to confirm what has been seen. Here, the Bank of England has unexpectedly hiked interest rates to 5%, the highest rate in almost 15 years, in a bid to curb inflation. It is the 13th rise in a row. And communities have commemorated the 75th anniversary of the arrival of the Empire Windrush to Britain. Now, the King followed in his mother's footsteps today, notching up his first winner at Royal Ascot. Desert Hero won at the Berkshire Course in the aptly named King George V Stakes. He still has some way to go, though, to match the late Queen's record. She had 22 winners throughout her reign. Our correspondent Rachel Younger on the Racing Royals.
From the hats, and there goes the cheer. It is always quite some spectacle, and the smiles were there from the start. But who could have predicted such a fairy tale finish for the new King and Queen's first Ascot?
And it's the Royal Runner on the outside. Banny and King with Desert Hero. Desert Hero has won. His Majesty the King.
Drama on the line.
But all smiles as His Majesty.
Delight in the royal box at Desert Hero's dash to victory. And memories too of another day a decade ago.
And look at the delight there, the sheer joy.
When the late Queen's glee at her own winner was equally unmistakable. All of this meaning mixed emotions for her granddaughter Zara.
Bittersweet, isn't it? It's, think how proud and excited our grandmother would have been, the Queen would have been. But, you know, to have a winner for Charles and Camilla and, you know, keep that dream alive was incredible, and what a race.
What a race, and what a moment for the jockey who brought the winner in at 18-1.
Tom, what was that like for you?
Genuinely, probably one of the proudest moments of being in the saddle so far.
Fist pumps, proud pats from the Queen, and just the smallest of mishaps for the King.
He knows all about that.
But nothing could take the shine off a day like this one. Rachel Younger, ITV News.
We're talking about thrills and spills. Tom Cruise is in London tonight for the premiere of the latest instalment in the Mission Impossible series. The actor may have turned 60, but he's still doing his own stunts, including one claimed to be the most death-defying of his career. Well, Amy Lewis is in London's Leicester Square tonight. And Amy, he is showing absolutely no sign of slowing down, is he?
No, he certainly hasn't. He's been here, as always, and signed an autograph for every single fan that has come here around the red carpet. And he did all of the stunts in this film himself, as always. He has been in the industry, Mary, for 40 years, and he told me he had no plans to stop.
In the trailer, I'm not giving anything away. They've got horses, we have submarines, we have motorcycles and cars, and a very amazing and extraordinary cast, great locations, an engrossing story, and it's fun summer movie.
Obviously, watching the film, it is end-to-end action. It's kind of the next level from the previous films that we have seen.
We wanted to push it all the way. We wanted to push it even harder.
Behind the scenes, like at points where you're like, actually, this is quite frightening. And give us some kind of idea what people don't know what happens behind the scenes in terms of the planning.
There's a lot of planning, years of planning going in, years of training, you know, and I'm training now for the next one. So even, you know, and I produce these films, I'm acting in these films, and yesterday I spent time in production meetings and 4 hours training, and we're doing this, but it's such a privilege to be able to do it.
You've obviously been doing this now for 40 years. What do you still want to achieve with your career, and how much longer can you see yourself doing this?
Forever. I'll do it till forever, for the rest of my life. You know, I love it. I absolutely love it. And there's always something, there's always so many challenges. There's so many things that I'm interested in, so many stories that I want to tell.
But There you go, Tom Cruise saying that he wants to keep on acting forever after being in the industry for 40 years. He and the rest of the cast have just gone inside here from the red carpet to watch the screening. Now, the premiere obviously is this evening here in the capital, but actually this will be in cinemas from July the 10th. I don't want to give away any spoilers, but if you have enjoyed the first Mission Impossible instalments, and this one certainly does not disappoint. It is end-to-end action.
All right, Amy Lewis in Leicester Square, thank you. Now, the COVID inquiry heard today from Sir Chris Whitty and Sir Patrick Vallance, the two experts who were a regular sight on TV during the pandemic. Sir Chris, who's still England's chief medical officer, said he found the abuse of scientists involved in the COVID response extremely concerning. And Sir Patrick, the government's former chief scientific officer, said there was a fear of spending money on pandemic efforts that may fail. Well, our health correspondent Martin Stew is outside the inquiry for us tonight. Martin, what else did they say?
Well, the first thing to remember about this inquiry, Mary, is that at this stage they're only looking at how resilient and prepared the UK was in the build-up to the pandemic and not the response. So when Sir Chris Whitty arrived this morning, the first thing he did in the inquiry was to address the families of the bereaved and say that he had seen firsthand the devastation that COVID could cause. He said, compared to a lot of other Western countries, the UK was actually quite well prepared, but they could have learnt more lessons from Asian countries where they'd seen pandemics more recently, like MERS and SARS. And he said, we were very good at responding to emergencies, but in between those emergency periods, we didn't really have the licence to consider radical policies, which included, the most radical of all, that national lockdown.
The one that I think we really absolutely should have done, taken much more seriously, was the capability to scale up. And that is useful in virtually anything. The ability, every pandemic, every epidemic, the ability to diagnose, for example, is essential. And we had a very good capacity to do a very small amount of diagnosis really quickly, and we did not have the ability to scale up.
Well, the next person to face questions was Sir Patrick Vallance. He said there was an inherent resistance to taking risks in this country. Things like the vaccine task force didn't go ahead because people were worried it may be branded an expensive failure. He said he regretted that scientific knowledge wasn't passed on quick enough and there wasn't enough data around. We'll hear from these two men again in the autumn, but lots going on next week, not least Matt Hancock and Nicola Sturgeon.
Martin, thank you. Well, still to come before Emmerdale, a record turnout as England's women take centre stage at the Ashes.
And I'll have the full national forecast with some of us set for a very warm weekend of weather. I'll tell you more in a few moments.
Would you join me and Alex up to this short break? Hello and welcome back. Now, England and Australia's women's teams have been slugging it out in the first Ashes test to be held over 5 days. It's all part of a multi-format competition between the two sides and is another sign of how the sport is continuing to grow and grow. Here's Layla Hayes.
There is nothing quite like the Ashes.
Once it was all about the men, but now England's women are sharing the spotlight, with games played in major venues and to a record number of fans.
I think it's fantastic, so yeah, I want to give them support, and that's basically why I'm here, really.
I like the influence of more women's sport, like the introduction of it becoming more popular and stuff, because I think it's really good.
We will see how it goes. I mean, at the moment things are looking good, so you know, it's all very promising and upbeat for women's cricket.
Taking on Australia in a bid for Ashes glory won't be easy, but things started well.
Gone, yes, what a catch that is.
Australia, though, soon began to dominate.
Oh dear. Full delivery gets the treatment from McGrath.
More than 70,000 tickets have now been sold for the Women's Ashes. Much has changed since England's women last won 10 years ago.
In print media, on the TV, just on social media, on all of those things, it's just way more visible than it used to be, and I think that's really helped. I think the actual cricket is better. You cannot possibly have missed the fact that this series is happening.
England fought back to leave the first test evenly poised for day 2. They'll now be hoping that with the home crowd advantage, this could be the year that shows how far they've come. Ayla Hayes, ITV News.
Well, let's get the weather now. Alex is here, and it's been very nice for the women's cricket, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's been another pretty good day. We still have a thunderstorm warning in place across some central parts of the Midlands, actually, until 8 o'clock. So we still could see a few downpours here and there, but on the whole, it has been another very warm day. And of course, this comes after the longest day yesterday. And boy, did we have some really lovely sunsets. Take a look at these pictures. This was the scene, some sheep, up towards the Temple Patrick in County Antrim, looking lovely there. And this is Glastonbury. We saw Rishi there earlier. Weather looked pretty good, but this was the scene for the campers at the TP tents there. And there were some extraordinary sunsets right up and down the country. And this was the Palm House in Sefton Park, Liverpool. Now, you may be thinking that actually our nights are going to start drawing a little bit closer as we head through the next few days. Actually, that's not going to be the case. We're still tilted most towards the sun in the northern hemisphere. So let's take a look at our sunset times for today. And they're actually very similar to what we had yesterday on our longest day. So 22:34 for Lerwick in the Northern Isles, Edinburgh slightly earlier, and you can see it gets earlier as we come further south into London. Roll on to next Monday, and that's when we do start to lose a minute here or there, as you can see. But the weather stays pretty fine as we head through the next few days. Let's take a look at the air mass chart, and things are going to get a little bit hotter as we head through the next few days. Let's take a look at our air mass and jet stream, and as you can see, the jet stream starts to make its way further north as we head through the next few days, and that feeds in a little warmer air from the far south. Let's take a look right now.
The warm weather continues. So why not squeeze the most out of the day? Heinz Tomato Ketchup sponsors ITV National Weather.
Well, let's start by having a look at our daytime maxes we're expecting over the coming days as we run into the weekend. And as you can see, as we head through, we are expecting it to touch 30 degrees Celsius as we push on to the weekend. Sunday, 31, 32 can't be ruled out at this stage. But on Monday, you may be glad to know it is going to be somewhat cooler. Temperatures back down to 24, although that's still above average for some parts of the UK. Average for the UK as a whole is 19 degrees Celsius. As for this evening and overnight, well, you can see we've got the systems out towards the west here, just starting to edge in. So this will start to affect some northern and western parts, but you can see out towards the southeast there, we do get high pressure starting to edge its way in as we head through the next 24 hours. So that's why the finer, warmer, hotter conditions are going to be for more south and southeastern parts of the UK. So for this evening then, as I mentioned just now, we are going to see that weather front approaching Northern Ireland and western parts of Scotland. There could be one or two heavy bursts in there as well, but out towards the east and southeast, you can see it's a dry night all round. There'll be some lengthy clear break. Temperatures like they have been most nights, hovering between 14 to 16 degrees Celsius. So another fairly mild night, and those temperatures shoot up as we head into tomorrow, particularly across the east and southeast. Highs of 29 certainly possible tomorrow afternoon, but you can see out towards the west and northwest, it is going to be somewhat more changeable. Outbreaks of rain, cooler conditions.
Heinz Tomato Ketchup sponsors ITV National Weather.
Well, that's the way it looks over the next few days. As I say, Sunday, maybe 31, 32.
OK, Alex, thank you. And that's all from us for now. Julie's here with news at 10, but from me and all the evening news team, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.